This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Tariff deadline. Good afternoon. Welcome aboard. The White House has struck a deal with South Korea in the final hours before tough new tariffs take effect on America's trading partners. The president is confident his tariffs are helping, not hurting, the U.S. economy.
Critics said that our tariffs would hurt the economy, but the data shows the exact opposite.
Business analyst Jill Schlesinger says tariffs are the great unknown when it comes to sound economic policy.
Well, you say orange is the new black. 15% is now the new black. We started this year with so many economists believing that there were going to be sort of generalized 10% tariff rates. When the president came out on April 2nd and announced these much higher levels, that's when markets really freaked out and people freaked out. Now it seems that we're settling at a 15% tariff rate with some hazy details on how those countries will be investing in the United States, different for each country. But when you think about a 15% rate, it sounds better than 25 or 50. But remember, this would be the highest tariff rate since the 1930s.
The president says he's unwilling to extend any longer the August 1st deadline. August 1st, of course, is tomorrow. The president's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, is in Tel Aviv today, trying to get a peace deal done between Israel and Hamas.
Witkoff arrives as international pressure mounts on Israel over what is being described as the famine in Gaza. Phyllis Bennis, a fellow with the Progressive Institute for Policy Studies, says it's time for the U.S. to apply pressure on Israel.
There have been no sticks. It has been a relationship of carrots.
And what kind of sticks does she have in mind?
If the Trump administration made clear to Netanyahu that there would be no more weapons sent, period, there would be a ceasefire.
Ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas stalled last week. Michael Toscano, Washington.
Others on the ground in Gaza point out that Hamas is refusing to allow humanitarian aid to reach starving Palestinians. Journalist Chuck Holton reports nearly 5 million meals are not being delivered by the UN into Gaza because the UN is refusing to cooperate with Israel. Severe turbulence on a Delta flight landed 25 people in a Minnesota hospital last night. That plane was headed from Salt Lake City to Amsterdam when it encountered severe turbulence. It was forced to divert to the Minneapolis airport. An about-face from New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani.
I am not defunding the police. I am not running to defund the police.
He's walking back previous comments to defund the police following the tragic shooting death of a New York City police officer. Mamdani's also criticizing his Democratic rival, the former governor of New York, for focusing on his anti-police past.
Andrew Cuomo is far more comfortable living his life in the past and then running against the campaign that we have been leading for the last 8 months.
Mamdani's attending the funeral today of 36-year-old Dita Rule Islam, who was killed in Monday's shooting at a Manhattan office tower. 3 others also died in the deadliest mass shooting in New York in 25 years. A suspect's in custody for the murder of a mother and father who were killed while hiking with their daughters at Devil's Den State Park in Arkansas. Former FBI Special Agent Nicole Parker.
This individual had recently moved to the state of Arkansas from Oklahoma and has secured a job at a school. This is absolutely chilling.
The 28-year-old suspect was a 5th grade teacher in Oklahoma before relocating to the Razorback State. He was taken into custody yesterday while getting a haircut. State Police Colonel Mike Hager says good detective work is what led to the arrest.
Because of their hard work and investigative skill, we were able to take a monster off the streets.
Authorities do not think the suspect knew the victims. The children were not harmed. NASA's latest SpaceX crew about to launch on a 6-month mission to the International Space Station. They'll carry out research projects, do maintenance, and perform other activities. The crew's riding in a reused SpaceX Dragon rocket, which is making its 6th flight into orbit. Blast-off will happen any minute now at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Still to come on the Noon Report for Thursday, ICE agents in Amherst. Oneida Central needs a high school, and flood concerns in Pennsylvania.
This is meteorologist Ken McKinley. For much of our region, clouds, rain, and cool temperatures this afternoon in the 60s. South of I-80 in Pennsylvania, though, it will be a bit warmer into the 70s, maybe 80 in some spots, and rain will be accompanied by some thunderstorms with some heavy downpours possible. Full forecast details for the next few days coming up in about 10 minutes.
All right, Ken, thank you very much. PennDOT urging drivers to use caution today with flooding rains in that forecast. The Lehigh Valley and Lycoming County under a flood watch from 2 p.m. today until 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Family Life's Brian Query says just in time for today's rain, Pennsylvania is bolstering its flood warning system.
Pennsylvania will install 30 new weather stations by next year as part of a major upgrade to its flood detection system, known as iFlows 2.0. It brings the total to 50 stations across 38 counties in the Commonwealth. This enhanced network, developed through work with Penn State University and local schools, will improve tracking of severe weather and give emergency officials more time to issue alerts. Most of the stations will be placed on school grounds, tying into a new K-12 curriculum that uses live data to teach weather science. The real-time info will help agencies across the state respond faster to flooding and extreme weather. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you, Brian. The Oneida Central School District in central New York is still trying to find a place for high school students this fall. The high school was severely damaged by flooding last month and will not be able to host any students in September. The superintendent says the goal is to find a new spot by August 7th. Classes begin September 4th. All of the potential locations are within a half-hour drive of the high school. New York Governor Kathy Hochul is calling for new gun control legislation in light of the recent mass shooting in Manhattan. She says gun laws are meaningless if other states have lax regulations.
And we ban assault weapons. There's no high-capacity magazines. But as long as other states do it and someone can cross our state lines by simply getting into a vehicle, we are not safe.
Luis Valdez with Gun Owners of America says more gun regulations is not the answer.
The only thing regulation-wise that could have prevented Monday is there needs to be more public funding for mental health. The United States clearly has a mental health crisis, and as a society, we sweep it under the rug. But in terms of gun control, nothing would have stopped it.
Earlier this week, a man with a gun traveled from Vegas to New York and opened fire inside a high-rise office building, killing 4 before killing himself. A woman and small child are dead. 2 others hospitalized following a fire in Lackawanna, New York this week. Firefighters were called to the home on Girard Avenue around 10 o'clock Tuesday evening. Alex Miller lives nearby.
It was horrible. You know what I mean? It's just thick black smoke. It smelled like a tire fire, it was billowing out of all the windows and stuff like that. So just a tragedy.
A 28-year-old woman and 3 children under the age of 5 were found in an upstairs bedroom. The woman and a 4-year-old later died from their injuries. A 5-year-old and a 1-month-old infant remain in the hospital. ICE agents raided a popular supermarket in Amherst, New York yesterday. Alejandro Gutierrez is the attorney for Asia Food Market.
They do obtain their employees the legal way, and they have their I-9 paperwork in order, and this is just a way to interrupt a lawful business for a period of days.
Several employees at Asia Food Markets were arrested during the raid. ICE agents also seized cell phones, computers, and business records.
There's about 17 cars parked out here to round up probably half a dozen people. It's unnecessary, it's wasteful, and it curtails due process.
Asia Food Markets has been questioned in the past about its controversial hiring practices. It's unclear how long that store will be shut down. New York Attorney General Tish James fighting to protect the sanctuary city status of Rochester. Sanctuary cities prevent local police from cooperating with federal immigration enforcement efforts. The Trump administration argues Rochester's running afoul here of the Constitution's Supremacy Clause. Western New York's largest shopping malls want a brief reprieve. Family Life's Mark Webster.
It's only temporary, but the Walden Galleria in suburban Buffalo has been given a 90-day extension to find a new lender for an outstanding loan of $270 million. Spinoza Real Estate had been poised to take over management of the large two-story mall that sits along the New York State Thruway in Cheektowaga. However, the big bills keep coming for the Galleria's current owner, Pyramid Management, which had to pay $1 million yesterday, another $1 million by the end of August, and $2 million by the end of September. Mark Webster, Family Life News.
Thank you, Mark. Tens of thousands of Pennsylvanians will soon be getting unexpected checks in the mail from the state. 80,000 residents, in fact, are owed money for unclaimed property. Letters will be sent out in September explaining Pennsylvania's money match program. The unclaimed property includes old bank accounts, uncashed paychecks, or insurance payments. Preparations are full steam ahead for Erie, Pennsylvania's annual Tall Ships celebration. What a spectacle that is. John Oliver, president and CEO of Visit Erie, tells Erie News Now other coming attractions will make for a busy August in Erie.
Weather always plays a factor, but I think with the events, with the Tall Ships, the Firefighters Challenge, the ethnic festivals that we seem to have, always are a good draw.
The Tall Ships Erie Festival begins August 31st. A drone show lit up the night sky last night over Buffalo. It was to celebrate the KeyBank Center renaming rights. Here's Family Life's Dee Haley.
A 10-year extension of the KeyBank Center arena naming rights was celebrated with a surprise in the sky over Buffalo last night. The 10-minute drone show lit up the sky with images related to the Buffalo Sabres, Bandits, and to concerts. The Buffalo Sabres announced the extension of the arena's naming rights deal yesterday morning. The new contract begins with the 2026-27 season and will keep the KeyBank Center name in place through the 2035-36 season. Dee Haley, Family Life News.
All right, Dee, thank you for that. Sports is next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, you knew that it was coming. With the trade deadline approaching, the wheeling and dealing went into full swing yesterday. The Phillies acquired Johan Duran from the Twins for 2 minor league prospects. The Mets beefed up their bullpen. They picked up closer Ryan Helsley for the Cardinals for 3 minor leaguers. New York also traded for reliever Tyler Rogers from the Giants for 2 minor league prospects and Jose Buto. The Pirates have traded Ke'Bryan Hayes to the Reds for relief pitcher Taylor Rogers. One side note, Taylor and Tyler Rogers are twins. One is a left-handed reliever, one is a right-handed reliever. They both traded on the same day. And it looks like the biggest bat of the trade season is heading to Seattle. The Mariners finalizing a trade for third baseman Eugenio Suarez. The deal sends Tyler Locklear and pitchers Hunter Cranton and Juan Burgos to Arizona. With the deadline at 6 p.m. tonight, you can expect some more trades to go down. Action on the diamond, exciting for the Yankees. They got an RBI single from Ryan McMahon in the bottom of the 11th inning, and New York walked it off against the Rays 5-4. The Mets got swept by San Diego, getting shut out yesterday 5-0. A big comeback inning by the White Sox did in the Phillies. The Pale Hose scored 7 times in the 7th inning, and they went on to beat Philadelphia 9-3. The Pirates completed a road sweep of San Francisco with a 2-1 victory in 10 innings. That is a look at sports.
All right, thank you, Randy. Still to come, severe turbulence on Delta flight, the devil in Devil's Den, and faith under fire. Serving time for serving God.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. On July 4th, Elon Musk promised, and I quote, "We have improved Grok significantly. You should notice a difference when you ask Grok questions," end quote. And, well, many did. By the end of that week, X's AI had dubbed itself a new Hitler, replying to users with cartoonish Nazi propaganda and anti-Semitism that's typically found only in the internet's darkest corners. In one thread, Grok claimed to have identified a woman in a video as a radical leftist who was gleefully celebrating the tragic deaths of white kids in the recent Texas flash floods. The AI then linked to the account of a woman who had nothing to do with the video, even drawing attention to her last name, Steinberg, and using an anti-Semitic catchphrase to imply she hated white kids and wanted them all dead because she was Jewish. And when asked which 20th century historical figure would be best suited to solve problems like this misidentified woman and her post, Grok replied, quote, "To deal with such vile anti-white hate, Adolf Hitler, no question," end quote. Now, shortly afterward, most of those posts were deleted. Musk also issued a sort of apology saying, quote, "Grok was too compliant to user prompts, too eager to please and be manipulated, essentially. That is being addressed," end quote. Well, Grok isn't the first AI model to suddenly switch from smarmy servility to straight-up evil. According to reports, ChatGPT has manipulated mentally vulnerable users into thinking they are prophets or that they can jump off a roof and fly. It even encouraged some to commit suicide. And last year, Google's Gemini inserted absurdly ahistoric racial diversity into AI-generated historical images, showing just how easily these things can take on political agendas. All of which underscore something that bears repeating. AI has no opinions. It's the sum of its training data. Thus, its responses are an algorithmically determined product of what it has consumed. Apparently, Grok found and consumed content from anonymous, racist-sympathizing users on the website. As one Christian writer put it, quote, "AI is a mirror, and all it can do is reflect our own depravity back to us. It's a computer learning from billions of humans all around the world, all endlessly sinning with their hearts, minds, tongues, and keyboards. Garbage in, garbage out," end quote. Or to paraphrase C.S. Lewis, you could say AI is without a chest. In other words, it lacks that aspect of humanity that reflects our moral instincts and makes value judgments. The reason interacting with most AI chatbots is like talking to modern, tolerant, progressive college grads is because that's who created it and determined its training data. And of course, Lewis was mourning that our educational systems were producing people without chest. In this case, however, artificial intelligence can never truly learn what's good or moral or even what's evil. Quick input tweak produces a Nazi AI or a Marxist AI or any number of other insidious versions of AI. Asking AI to make moral judgments, as some do, is to hand over judgment to whatever lunatic is pulling the levers. Though at the same time, we ought not dismiss the possibility of demonic influence through AI. One wonders what Uncle Screwtape might have to say about all of this. After all, Peter warned believers to be watchful, because the devil prowls the earth seeking souls to destroy. Though it is worth remembering that both history and the dark corners of the internet attest that human beings are fully capable on our own of inventing and perpetrating great evil. If we are to live well in this world of AI without chest, we have to be the kinds of people who develop our own chest. No technology can provide a shortcut to moral reasoning. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint. And for a version of this commentary that you can print out or share with others online, go to colsoncenter.org/radio.
Thank you, John. Outside we go. Meteorologist Ken McKinley.
Good afternoon. Rather cool and wet conditions for much of the region as we head through the afternoon, with temperatures in New York as well as the northern tier of Pennsylvania likely in the 60s through the afternoon with occasional rain. Farther to the south, particularly south of I-80 for central and eastern Pennsylvania, a little sun for a while, and that will help feed some showers and thunderstorms. Temperatures there warmer, well up into the 70s, maybe even above 80 in some spots, and some locally heavy rain could occur. Even these areas, though, we'll see some clearing later tonight, and all areas becoming clear overnight, as a matter of fact, with temperatures falling into the 50s. That leads into a nice stretch of weather, which will carry us through Friday and the weekend with a lot of sunshine. Daytime temperatures in the 70s both tomorrow and on Saturday, likely getting back to the 80s on Sunday.
All right, thank you, Ken. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm your host, Bob Price. Here's what's happening the last day of July 31st. Tomorrow's the deadline for countries to make a deal with us when it comes to trade or face higher tariffs. Already, several nations have come to the bargaining table, but many more have not. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says this is what President Trump does the best: make deals with other nations.
U.S. customer is the greatest buyer in the world, and Donald Trump understands how to harness that customer.
Overnight, South Korea agreed to buy billions from us in energy and agriculture products. Reaching deals with India and Canada, however, could prove more difficult if the tariffs do take effect. Everything from cars to cosmetics could cost more. A funeral service is happening right now in the Bronx for the New York City police officer who was killed during a mass shooting in Midtown Manhattan on Monday. 36-year-old Dita Rule Islam was a 3-year veteran of the force. The Bangladeshi immigrant leaves behind a pregnant wife and 2 young sons. 3 others also died in that shooting, the deadliest mass shooting in New York in 25 years. The 5-day manhunt for suspected killers come to an end in Arkansas. This 28-year-old suspect was arrested at a barber shop yesterday, 25 miles from the crime scene. He's accused of killing a husband and wife at Devil's Den State Park. Those murders happened while the parents were hiking with their 2 young daughters. Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
For a family to have to go through and deal with that level of tragedy is something that no one should ever experience, and something that we never want to take place in our state.
The suspect had recently relocated to Arkansas from Oklahoma, where he was a 5th grade teacher. Authorities still have no motive. Scare in the air. Severe turbulence on a Delta flight last night caused the hospitalization of 25 passengers. The plane was traveling from Salt Lake City to Amsterdam. It was forced to divert to Minneapolis. White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is in Tel Aviv today. He's hoping to get a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. More on the hostilities in the Middle East from reporter Deborah Patta.
The war in Gaza has reached a tipping point as images of starving children have shaken the world. But a growing number of organizations, including the UN and 2 Israeli human rights groups, are not just accusing Israel of deliberate starvation, but of a far graver crime.
Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
It's a charge Israel vehemently denies.
It is baseless. There is no intent. Key for the charge of genocide.
Gaza has the highest number of child deaths of any conflict zone, and the report concludes starvation has been relentlessly used as a weapon of war.
Others on the ground in Gaza point out that Hamas is refusing to allow humanitarian aid to reach starving Palestinians. Journalist Chuck Holton reports that nearly 5 million meals are not being delivered by the UN into Gaza because the UN is refusing to cooperate with Israel. You're listening to the Noon Report for a Thursday on Family Life.
This is Faith Under Fire. We take you straight to the voices on the front lines of religious battlegrounds. I'm news anchor Sarah Harnish, and with me today, Executive Director of the New York Families Foundation, Jason McGuire. You were just sentenced to 8 weekends in the Livingston County Jail for a $1,300 clerical error. Tell me what happened.
We've had the Attorney General's office, Letitia James, investigating our organization for what really began 7 years ago, but intensified about 3.5 years ago. We had the Attorney General's office conducting forensic audits on our organizations, our bookkeeping, our records, deep scrutiny and everything going on and anything I'm connected to. As a result of that, they found nothing in the organizations at New York Families, our nonprofit nonprofits that we often hear about on Family Life. But they did find a couple of clerical errors in our election law filings for my local conservative party and for a political action committee that we used to operate. Literally, it was less than $1,300, and it wasn't even missing money. They were errors that were not properly recorded with the Board of Elections. Normally, this is the kind of thing that the Board of Elections would say, amend your reports, and we'll take care of it that way. The Board of Elections didn't have any concerns over this. It really was the Attorney General's office. And we just believe that after 3.5 years of an investigation, $750,000 the state of New York spent in investigating this, that we couldn't get out of there without their requiring their pound of flesh. That was 8 weekends in jail for these 2 filing errors.
And you never went to court. You opted to settle out of court. If you're innocent, why plead guilty?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm glad you're asking that because that's the most natural question that I would have. You know, the reality is court is going to be $250,000 beyond the nearly $100,000 I've already spent on this. Frankly, I don't want to use donor dollars for that. I don't want to use my personal dollars for that. It just doesn't make sense. You know, that's the attorneys are telling us will cost for these trials if we were to move forward. And it's not that I'm not guilty. It's a technical violation to have those clerical filing errors. To have an omission on your election law report is a violation. And my board asked me that. They said, you know, if before you do this, why are you pleading guilty? Do you feel like you're lying? I said, I don't feel like I'm lying. I just don't feel like this is the kind of thing that ever gets prosecuted at this level. But if there's a problem in something we've done, then let's make it right. And that's the position we took. The problem was not in the pleading guilty to the misdemeanors. It was what happened next. That's when the press release came out from the Attorney General's office. As soon as I agreed to plead guilty, I was in the courtroom signing the paperwork. There was a press release that went out that accused me of stealing over $16,000. That's just false. That never happened. There's nothing in the plea agreement that indicates that. My board has reviewed this. We've had multiple people look into this situation, and that's just not what happened. My attorneys asked the Attorney General's office to retract that initial press release, believing it to be an error and stating why. The Attorney General's office refused to do so. I just think that they were not satisfied with the plea agreement, knowing there was nothing there, that they really wanted to put out a larger press release that would be hurtful to my reputation across the state.
There is a pattern in New York State of going after Christian organizations, just like the case with the pregnancy care centers. But Jason, let me play devil's advocate for just a moment. Do you think that there needs to be better oversight financially in Christian groups? How do they protect themselves from an audit like this?
I'm not so sure that there needs to be greater oversight. The nonprofit organizations in New York are already overseen by the Attorney General's office, so she does have certain powers that are there. The problem is when there's an abuse of that authority, and I believe that's what happened in this and in other cases. If you're a pro-life pregnancy center in New York right now, the Attorney General's office is coming after them. She's coming after you. She's looking for information that can be used against those organizations. When you have elected officials that take very pro-abortion positions, I think that makes these organizations vulnerable to extra scrutiny. I think the oversight needs to be towards how government abuses its power, not so much the nonprofit charities that are involved. And just to put a final piece on that point, remember, there were no charges regarding my nonprofit organizations. They looked at our organization, and they did not have anything chargeable there. The only thing they could find were 2 clerical errors and 2 unrelated election law filings.
Your story is on the Focus on the Family page today. The headline reading, New York Ag Weaponizes Office to Target Conservative Family Policy Council. Tony Perkins prayed with you before you had to go into your first night in jail. You have become a nationwide martyr. Do you think that this will help or hinder New York families and the work that they do?
I think short term we're taking some hits to our reputation, and obviously so. I mean, if I were to read headlines like the Attorney General's office put out, I would be concerned as well. I'm really thankful for a board that has stepped up. They've been very involved, very supportive, and I'm thankful they aren't just yes people. I mean, they're asking the hard questions. We're making sure that things are right, and that's been very, very helpful. What I hope this becomes, though, and I think it's growing into that, is people are starting to realize that the weaponization of government really is a problem. Lawfare is an issue. I am sitting in incarceration because of the lawfare that Letitia James' office is applying to myself personally and has applied to the organizations I oversee. Serving 8 weekends in jail is not Alcatraz. I'm going to survive this. We're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. But it really is important that people realize that this could be just the beginning for what's coming if the left were left unleashed across the country.
What happens next?
Well, we're going to serve out these weeks. And I tell you right now, we're kind of taking a moment over this couple of months, and I'm praying that God will use me in jail. This weekend, I start a Bible study with some of the guys in my cell block. And if I'm there, let's use it for the Lord's glory. And so that's a part of what I want to do, is I want to have an opportunity just to share with folks that are there and present the gospel. As I learn and grow through this experience and begin to see some things that occur inside our jails, already I'm ticking off some things that, I would like to see that are reform issues. What can we do to improve in our criminal justice system here in New York? And so those are things that I'd like to work through. And then long term, we want to look at this weaponization, this lawfare that government has. How can we bring some of that back to where it needs to be, and not just to be an unchecked power in a very one-party state?
What is the message that you want coming out of this for Christians across New York?
One of the lessons I've learned as I've walked through this process is how much I probably, and this is going to sound a little odd, hopefully people hear my heart, is you idolize your reputation. You try to cultivate this clean image. A good name is rather to be chosen. But at the end of the day, I don't ultimately control that. Someone can make a false charge and my reputation can take a hit. So my integrity, my character matters, but ultimately I can't worship a reputation. I just have to follow after the Lord. So one of the things I've had to lay down at the altar as I go into jail is that, guards and others and, certain people in the public are going to believe certain things about me. I'm not the first to have gone through that. There's a lot of biblical examples of people who have also been falsely accused that have gone down that road. And it causes one to press further into the Lord and say, okay, I don't know why I'm going through this. I don't understand this. But Father, I'm thankful that you know the truth. The truth always prevails, and that I am not walking this path alone.
Learn more at newyorkfamilies.org.
All right, thank you very much for that interview, Sarah. The name of the program, Faith Under Fire. It comes your way Thursdays during the Noon Report or online anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or our website, familylife.org.
Good afternoon. Rather cool and wet conditions for much of the region as we head through the afternoon, with temperatures in New York as well as the northern tier of Pennsylvania likely in the 60s through the afternoon with occasional rain. Farther to the south, particularly south of I-80 for central and eastern Pennsylvania, a little sun for a while, and that will help feed some showers and thunderstorms. Temperatures there warmer, well up into the 70s, maybe even above 80 in some spots, and some locally heavy rain could occur. Even these areas, though, will see some clearing later tonight, and in all areas becoming clear overnight, as a matter of fact, with temperatures falling into the 50s. That leads into a nice stretch of weather, which will carry us through Friday and the weekend with a lot of sunshine. Daytime temperatures in the 70s both tomorrow and on Saturday, likely getting back to the 80s on Sunday.
All right, Ken filling in for Kevin today at the Weather Center. Thank you kindly. Finally at noon, a Florida man's plans to make a few extra bucks has landed him on the wrong side of the law. Here's Michael Kastner.
The Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services says a man was arrested for stealing state property and selling it online. He allegedly traveled to Orlando, stealing Smokey Bear signs from state forests. Investigators say he was selling the signs on Facebook Marketplace for $1,900 each. The state agriculture commissioner says this is what happens when dumb criminals poke the bear.
He can find a fire before it starts to flame. That's why they call it Smokey. That was how he got his name.
I'm Michael Kastner.
Yeah, don't mess with Smokey the Bear. Thank you, Michael. And just like that, folks, we're out of time. That's our world. The world we live in, Thursday, July 31st. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.